Welcome everyone. Today we're heading to East Sussex, one of the most varied and rewarding counties in England. East Sussex sits in the southeast corner of the country, with Kent to the east, West Sussex to the west, and the English Channel running along its southern edge. It's a county of real contrasts. You've got the highest chalk sea cliffs in England, some of the finest medieval castles in Britain, a battlefield that changed the entire course of English history, beautiful villages, and one of the best preserved medieval towns you'll find anywhere. It's compact enough to explore thoroughly in a few days, but rich enough that you could keep coming back and still find something new. So without further ado, here are the 15 best places to visit in East Sussex. We start at the very edge of England. Beachy Head is the highest chalk sea cliff in the country, rising 162 metres straight up from the English Channel below. On a clear day, you can actually see the French coast on the horizon, just 29 miles away. The views in every direction are stunning, and below you can see the lighthouse, painted in distinctive red and white stripes, so it stands out against the cliff face behind it. It's free to visit, always open, and there are no fences at the edge. The drop is just there, sudden and sheer, so do be careful. Walk east along the cliff top toward the Seven Sisters and give yourself at least a couple of hours. It's completely unmissable. Just east of Beachy Head, the chalk cliffs continue into one of the most iconic stretches of coastline in England, the Seven Sisters. They are 7 distinct chalk headlands, separated by 6 dry valleys, carved out over thousands of years by the sea. Each one has its own name, though most people who walk this coast couldn't name them all. What everyone knows is the view. Those rolling white cliffs, one behind another, stretching away into the distance against the sea and sky. The country park also includes the Cuckmere River Valley, which meanders in beautiful curves across the flat coastal plain before meeting the sea at Cuckmere Haven, a wide shingle beach at the foot of the cliffs, and one of the few completely undeveloped river mouths in the south of England. The walking here is brilliant in any season: blue sea and wildflowers in the summer, golden light in the autumn, and dramatic storms in the winter. It's free to enter, always open, and one of the great natural assets of the southeast. At the western end of the Seven Sisters, where the cliffs dip down to beach level, you'll find Birling Gap, the National Trust's main access point to this stretch of coast. A wooden staircase takes you down to the beach below, where chalk reef and shingle are exposed at low tide. Standing at the foot of those white cliffs and looking up at them from the beach is a completely different experience from being on top, and equally impressive. There's a National Trust cafe and visitor centre at the top of the steps, which is a very welcome sight after a long cliff-top walk. Birling Gap also tells a vivid story about coastal erosion. The chalk here retreats at roughly 1 metre per year. Several old Coast Guard cottages that once stood next to the current cafe have already fallen into the sea. The National Trust monitors it closely, but the landscape genuinely looks different every few years. It makes the whole place feel just a little more precious for it. Moving along the east coast, we come to Eastbourne, and one of the finest Victorian seafronts in England. Eastbourne Pier stretches 300 metres out into the channel on iron legs. It was first opened in 1872, has a beautiful domed pavilion at its head, and is still going strong today. It's a Grade 2 listed structure and looks exactly as a traditional British seaside pier should. The wider seafront is just as impressive, a promenade running for several miles alongside the shingle beach, backed by handsome Victorian and Edwardian houses in cream and white. Flower beds are immaculately kept. The Art Deco bandstand, built in 1935, hosts live music throughout the summer, and on a sunny day, sitting on a deck chair listening to a brass band by the sea is about as classically English as it gets. Now we head inland to one of the most historically significant sites, not just in England, but in all of Western European history. The Battle of Hastings was fought on the 14th of October, 1066. King Harold II of England on one side, William Duke of Normandy on the other. Harold was killed, and with him ended Anglo-Saxon England. The Norman conquest that followed changed the English language, the aristocracy, the church, and the landscape. Almost everything in English history that came after flows in some way from what happened on this hill on that single day. William ordered an abbey to be built on the battlefield as an act of penance, and the high altar was placed on the exact spot where Harold fell. The abbey was later dissolved by King Henry VIII, and what remains today are the ruins of the monastic buildings and the gatehouse, but the battlefield itself is preserved, and you can walk across it with an audio guide that brings 1066 to life in a vivid and immediate way. Standing on the ridge where Harold's army stood, looking down the slope where the Norman cavalry charged again and again, you genuinely feel the weight of what happened here. It's managed by English Heritage, and it's one of the greatest historic sites in the country. Now we travel from the most significant battlefield in English history to arguably the most photogenic castle in England, Bodiam Castle. Built in 1385 by Sir Edward the Knight, Bodiam is a textbook example of a late medieval castle. Square plan, round towers at each corner, surrounded by a wide moat that reflects the walls perfectly on a still day. It's beautiful in a way that's almost hard to believe. The walls are largely intact, the moat is full, the towers are complete. Approaching across the bridge on a misty morning, it looks exactly as a castle should look, which is why it's been painted, photographed and used as a film and TV backdrop more times than anyone can count. Managed by the National Trust, you can climb the towers and walk the walls, looking out over the Rother Valley and down into the courtyard below. In autumn, when the trees turn gold and the castle glows in low afternoon light, it's simply one of the most beautiful sights in England. East Sussex has more than its fair share of impressive castles, but Herstmonceux is probably the most underrated of the lot. Built in the 1440s, it is one of the earliest large brick buildings in England. That use of brick gives it a warmth that stone castles don't have. The walls are a rich, weathered red that shifts in tone through the day and glows warmly in afternoon sunshine. It's surrounded by a moat and set within over 500 acres of gardens and grounds, including formal gardens, a walled garden, a bluebell wood, and a wildflower meadow. For much of the 20th century, it was home to the Royal Greenwich Observatory, which relocated here from London in 1957 to escape light pollution. The old observatory domes are still in the grounds, and there's a science centre offering telescope sessions and astronomy exhibitions. Castle tours are excellent value, just a few pounds to explore one of the finest 15th century interiors in England. This is a genuine hidden gem. Pevensey Castle is remarkable because it essentially contains 3 different pieces of history layered on top of each other in the same place. The outermost walls are Roman, built in the late 3rd century as part of a chain of coastal forts defending against raids from across the North Sea. These walls are among the best preserved Roman fortifications in Britain. Inside those Roman walls, the Normans built their own castle after 1066, one of the very first Norman strongholds in England, built in the immediate aftermath of the conquest and used through several centuries of turbulent medieval politics. Then in the Second World War, when a German invasion seemed genuinely possible, the castle was incorporated into the local defence network. Machine gun posts were concealed within the medieval walls, designed to be invisible from the air, and they largely succeeded. The outer Roman walls are free to enter at any time, and the inner castle is managed by English Heritage and charges a small admission fee. It's a layered, complex and endlessly interesting place. Lewes Castle. It was built by William de Warenne, one of William the Conqueror's most important barons. Unusually, it has 2 mottes, 2 artificial mounds, each carrying a tower, rather than the single motte typical of Norman castles. The result is a castle that runs along the ridge rather than clustering around a central point. You can climb the main keep for panoramic views over the town, the River Ouse Valley, and the South Downs stretching away in every direction. On a clear day, it's one of the best views in East Sussex. The Barbican House Museum next door is worth your time for one thing in particular: a brilliantly detailed scale model of medieval Lewes brought to life with a light and sound presentation that gives you real context for the town you're about to walk through. And Lewes itself is worth exploring on foot. The high street has buildings from every period, there are independent shops and good pubs, and every 5th of November the town hosts one of the most spectacular bonfire night celebrations in England. There are many beautiful old towns in England, but very few with the concentrated atmosphere of Rye. This small hilltop town above the Romney Marsh is one of the most perfectly preserved medieval towns in the country. Rye was one of the Cinque Ports, the medieval group of southeast English towns that provided ships to the crown in exchange for trading privileges. In its heyday, Rye sat right on the sea. Over the centuries, the bay silted up, the shoreline moved south, and Rye was essentially left stranded on its hill, preserved by the very thing that ended its commercial importance. The streets in the centre look much as they did in the Tudor period. Mermaid Street, a steep cobbled lane of leaning timber-framed houses, is the most photographed, and for good reason. The Mermaid Inn, which has stood there since the 15th century and was once a notorious haunt of the Hawkhurst gang smugglers, is still open today. There's a medieval defence tower that now houses the town museum, independent bookshops and galleries, and sweeping views across the marsh from the churchyard of St Mary's. Allow at least half a day, it won't feel like enough. The town of Hastings divides into a modern resort and an old town, and the old town is where the real character of the place lives. At the eastern end of the old town is Rockanaw, the working heart of the Hastings fishing community, one of the oldest and most remarkable in England. Hastings operates the largest beach-launched fishing fleet in the country. Without a harbour, the boats are simply winched up onto the shingle beach after each trip and launched back through the surf when the fishermen go out again. It's a method of fishing that has been used here for centuries. Fresh seafood stalls sell oysters, crab and smoked fish straight from the boats. The alleyways of the old town are full of independent shops and pubs. And at the western end, Hastings Contemporary Gallery sits right on the seafront, putting on a consistently strong programme of contemporary art exhibitions. Hastings is just much more than a seaside resort. From the coast, we head into the South Downs to the village of Alfriston, one of the most beautiful villages in East Sussex. Alfriston sits in the Cuckmere River Valley, surrounded by rolling chalk hills right on the South Downs Way long-distance footpath. It's a village of real age and real beauty. The street plan is medieval, the buildings range from the 14th century onward, and the whole place has a settled, unhurried quality. The Church of St Andrew, known locally as the Cathedral of the South Downs, is the centrepiece. Right next to the church, Alfriston Clergy House is a 14th century thatched hall house, and it was the very first building ever acquired by the National Trust, purchased in 1896 for just £10. The interior has been carefully restored and gives a fascinating glimpse into what domestic life in medieval England actually looked like. There are good tea rooms, traditional pubs, and excellent walking in every direction. Alfriston rewards a slow afternoon. Deep in the wooded Sussex countryside, Sheffield Park is one of the most celebrated gardens in the entire National Trust portfolio. The garden was originally landscaped in the 18th century by Capability Brown, who created the 4 interconnected lakes, the sweeping lawns, and the strategic planting of trees. In later centuries, successive owners added an extraordinary collection of trees and shrubs from around the world. The result is a garden that looks great all year, but is quite simply spectacular in 2 specific seasons. In late spring, rhododendrons and azaleas put on a brilliant display of colour reflected in the lakes. But autumn is what made Sheffield Park famous. As October turns to November, the trees turn in a sequence of intense, breathtaking colour. Golds, reds, oranges and deep purples, all reflected perfectly in the water below. On a still morning with mist on the lakes and the trees blazing above, it really is one of the great sights in England. Book ahead if you're visiting on an autumn weekend. It draws big numbers, and rightfully so. Just across the road from Sheffield Park Station is one of the most loved heritage railways in Britain, the Bluebell Railway. The line runs for 11 miles through the Sussex countryside between Sheffield Park in the south and East Grinstead in the north, where it connects with the National Rail network, so you can actually reach it from London without a car. The original line opened in 1882 and was closed by British Railways in 1958. Within 2 years, enthusiasts had reopened part of it as a preserved steam railway, making it one of the first standard gauge heritage railways in the world. The whole thing is run by volunteers, several hundred people who between them maintain the steam locomotives, operate the trains and keep the stations in immaculate period condition. The collection of Victorian and Edwardian locomotives is among the finest in the country. The journey winds through woodland and meadow. The stations are beautifully preserved, and the whole experience is genuinely charming. It's magical for children, great for railway enthusiasts, and simply a very pleasant ride for everyone else. The Christmas Santa Express in December sells out well in advance every year. We return to Hastings for our final stop, and for a piece of history carved into the rock beneath the town itself. Under Hastings Castle, cut into the soft sandstone of West Hill over many centuries, is a network of caves that served as a hub of smuggling activity in the 18th and early 19th centuries. Smuggling on the Sussex coast at this time was not a small-scale romantic enterprise of popular imagination. It was actually a major organised industry run by powerful gangs who controlled the illegal import of brandy, gin, tea, silk and tobacco from the continent, and who were capable of overwhelming virtually any opposition the authorities could put against them. The smuggler's adventure brings this history to life through a guided walk through the cave network, with dramatic lighting and a wealth of solid historical information. It's aimed primarily at families, and children absolutely love it. The caves are genuinely atmospheric, and the storytelling is lively and well researched. But adults find it just as fun and compelling because the history really is fascinating. It's the perfect way to end a journey through a county that is full of surprises at every turn.